The topic I wanted to discuss today is the different methods of compoundings used for IBOR transition. Just to give you a quick background, as during the IBOR transition, LIBOR rates will be replaced by alternative reference rates. Alternative reference rates are overnight rates, and the most commonly used convention to calculate interest using alternative reference rates or ARRs is to use compounding in arrears. Compounding in arrears uh, simply compound the rates or the compound the balances to calculate the compounded interest or the compounded amount. Over the course of last 1.5 years, different regulators and the and different working groups, whether it's RFR working group in the UK or ARC in the US, have come up with different methods of compounding, primarily to support the industry and the implementation in the different systems. Uh, what I've seen is that there is a myth, or there is a myth around the different compounding methods, and if they are actually very different compounding methods or something very similar. And there is this absolute lack of clarity over what those methods are and why they are different, um, and what's and I think a little bit of fear as well, because when BOE presents those formulas, or the ARC presents those calculations, um, the notations made them look extremely complicated. So I think today's task is, what I'll try to do is to simplify the myth, uh, and we see how we go. So we will start with the rate compounding method. I think there are predominantly two methods which we're talking about. One is rate compounding, which is in regulatory terms, or in the documentation, you read it as cumulative rate compounding method. And the second one is balance compounding, or amount compounding, or principal compounding. So you see different bodies depending upon whom you're talking to. These are some synonyms which you see that people are referring to. Effectively, they are the same thing. Balance amount or principal compounding, exactly the same thing. Rate compounding or cumulative rate compounding is also is exactly the same thing. There is another version of the rate compounding, which is NCCR, which is non-cumulative rate compounding. Rate compounding. Basically, non-cumulative rate compounding is another application of the cumulative rate compounding. So today's focus, I think, we're going to focus on these two things, and then we can briefly talk about that how we can start from this and end up on this non-cumulative rate compounding. So without wasting any further time, let's get into it. Rate compounding is defined as this formula over here. Just simply copy and paste it to the bottom. Uh, right. So I will explain different components of this formula. This is on the left-hand side. Um, you have FCR, which is final compounded rate, um, for the period, whatever the compounding period is. So DP is compounding period. This is obviously the multiple. I is equal to 1 to dp. That is, multiply everything from 1 to db. dB is again the compound period. Uh, this RI over here is an annualized interest rate. So annualized interest rate. Uh, N is number of days. So if you're not over the weekend, it can be just one. It only changes to 3 for the weekends or any holidays. And this N here is the convention. So it could be 360 or 365. So number of days in a year. So let's take a simple example. So let's assume that we want to expand this equation for 3 days. And those 3 days are, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So for the simplicity, I'm trying to avoid weekends or any holidays, just because the purpose of this presentation is to explain the concept. So if I were to expand the above equation for 3 days, it will become 1 plus R1, which is could be one day, Monday, over N, multiplied by 1. So this will be the same for all three. 1 plus R2 divided by N, and 1 plus R3 divided by N. So minus 1 is equal to FCR. Now, um, so Ri over N is basically pro rata, um, unannualized. Sorry, if I were to use this correct terminology, it is unannualized interest rate, right? Which we can assume that Ri over Ni is basically equal to Ri, where Ri reflects the unannualized interest rate. So then, if you were to simplify the above equation, FCR dB, sorry, becomes 1 plus R1, 1 plus R2, 1 plus R3, minus 1. And when we add the principal to it, so if we, this is just the interest rate. So this gives me the interest rate that is in percentage terms. And if I were to calculate the interest amount, what I'll do is I'll just multiply the P, which is the initial principal, with this equation. Then it becomes 1 plus R1, 1 plus R2, 1 plus R3, minus 1, right? This is in its simplest form is the interest amount. That's how we calculate the interest amount. And if we were to calculate the total amount, in not only the interest but the principal plus interest, what all we need to do is to take away this minus 1 from here. Then it becomes the overall. Sorry, if I just do it honestly, P to 1 plus R1 plus R2, 1 plus R3 minus P. So now if you take this component, sorry, if you look at this component, this is basically the total principal plus interest amount. However, if we look at all of this, this becomes only interest component. Right. So this is the breakdown. Now, if I were to change it to the other equation, which is balance compounding equation. So balance compounding, what it does is simply uh, interest for day one. If I'm just looking at the interest component, is principal into 1 plus R1 minus P. Interest for day two is basically principal for 1 plus R1, right, which is the new principal for first day into 1 plus R2 minus P to ensure that we are only looking at the interest. In I3, again the same thing, 1 plus R1, 1 plus R2, which is the new principal plus the interest for the previous day. If you multiply it by 1 plus R3, that gives the principal plus interest minus P, that will only give you the interest component. So now when you match this form of the equation that we just obtained with that form of the equation, you can see both of them are exactly the same, where P in both forms is principal, R is basically the unannualized interest rate, which is equal to Ri over N. N is number of days in 1 year, and Ri is the annualized interest rates. So guys, this is what it is, the balance compounding versus the rate compounding, which is quite a topic of quite a lengthy discussion. But I think, as you can see, it is a pretty straightforward, I think, really simple thing with simple maths. I don't see any differences between the two. Conceptually, I think what is going on, that in the rate compounding here, we are finding this component first, which is just the rate component, and then multiplying it with the principal. However, in the amount compounding or balance compounding, we are not calculating the rate for the period first. We are multiplying the rate with the principal as we go forward in time. So this is the only difference between the rate and the balance compounding. However, as you can see at the end, they both converge to the same equation. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post your questions. Um, uh, I mean, below the video in the comment section. Thanks for bearing with me. Thank you very much.